Well, welcome everyone to the Bravery Blueprint. I'm Brian Ellis with my co-host Travis Yates. Today we have a special guest, a dear friend of mine. His name is Quinton Coples. He's a retired NFL defensive end, and welcome to the show, Quinton.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited about being here and looking forward to a great conversation with high intellectual individuals.
Well, before we jump in, I have to say, Quinton's he's a big man, but more importantly, he has a big mind, and he's one of the first people I met when I moved out to the Atlanta area, and I was so impressed by his level of intention, and just the way he talks to people. Just a funny story. We've shared many lunches together, and what I love about you, sir, is the fact that you don't go to lunch. It's not a normal lunch, and I'm not talking about the size of the lunch. I'm talking about the quality of the lunch. I'm talking about
Right.
connection is on the menu.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, man, every time we've sat and had lunch, it's been a 2 or 3 hour endeavor, and it's it kind of it resets me to some degree, because life is always on this hustle, right? It's bigger,
Right.
stronger, faster. Got to go. I can pencil you in for this amount of time, but we really get to work on on some deep conversation when we give that amount of time and attention to people, and I'm grateful for it. So first and foremost, thank you.
Thank you as well. You challenged me in a lot of different ways as well to think outside the box and different strategies to come up with some of the creative thoughts and ideas that I've had over the past time of knowing you. So yeah, it's a pleasure as well.
Yeah. So one of the reasons we wanted to have you on this show is, we talk a lot about leadership, and
Hmm.
um, your time competing at the highest levels, and being on a lot of teams. Um, you know, and I know we've talked a lot in conversations about being a difference between being a coach and a player's coach, and this whole leading other people, and
Absolutely.
um, basically just kind of wanted to get uh, your initial thoughts on look, I think organizations, whether you're a professional sports organization or you run a
Hmm.
bank or a police department, there's this balance of, where we're trying to get the best out of our people. And
Absolutely.
there's a lot of people that just, they go about that completely different. And but the one commonality I've heard from you in many conversations is kind of this player's mentality. Can you share some insights on that?
In regards to like leadership, player mentality, or just players mentality in general?
Yeah, just from the coaches that you've played for,
Hmm.
whether it's been in the NFL or whether it's been in college, or at any level.
Right.
I mean, what kind of coach that have you gravitated more to? Has it been a disciplined guy? Has it been somebody that sees everybody as an individual, or you know?
Sort of, kind of both. I would say I think that we we overzoot the discipline part a lot because growing up, culture has kind of cultivated us into being able to say that discipline gets the best results. And in my time growing up, I come from uh, rural area or so much of a lot of trauma within that area, and so that discipline didn't really resonate with me well. It actually took me to a different place instead of putting me in a more motivated position to be able to accomplish the goal at hand. And so I think that the coaches that I kind of gravitated to the most were the one that earned my trust and respect. And then and that's not necessarily saying they are a particular type. They kind of good at a couple of things. One is understanding who you are or understanding the player individually. Someone who's knowledgeable, and then someone who has great leadership qualities and understand the mission overall, and don't never let those things intertwine, but deal with those things individually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Quinton, thanks so much for being on. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but when you talk about trauma, I'm going to relate this a little bit to law enforcement. Okay. There may not be so much trauma before the job, but there's certainly trauma that happens within the job. And you talk about the importance of earning trust. And so I'll make this assumption, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that you probably had a hard time trusting people at first.
Absolutely.
And I think that's very similar inside law enforcement, especially if they've had the trauma of being, stabbed in the back or whatever before. So how vital was that for you that before you would trust them, they would show you that they trusted you?
That's a good point. That's a hidden gem that I think a lot of people overlook, because I think trust is earned, and so to expedite the process is to already establish that you trust me, because now I have to get to a place of making a decision whether or not I'm going to trust you. And so I think when you go ahead and put that out there, that you basically trust me from the beginning, or trust me, relatively in the beginning, it allows me to kind of expedite that process of figuring you out, going through different things, and then talking amongst brethren in regards to whether or not you can be trusted, and hearing different experiences and perspective, which also I believe plays a part in your judgment and decision making in regards to whether or not you're going to trust someone.
Yeah, I mean, that's so important. And the other thing that really strikes me, Quinton, is the difficulty of a coach with your teammates all being from different places, all from different cultures, all probably over 100 different stories, right?
Correct.
And you talk about a coach's how they coach. How did you see, because you can't coach everybody the same, right?
No.
So how did you, where did you see the most success where they were able to blend those coaching styles? And we could relate this to leadership styles, right, in any organization. What did you see that worked for them and able to make that happen?
Well, the characteristics that I mentioned earlier, being able to be trusted, respected. But also I think that a coach or leader that already has the mission in mind, so they already understand the leadership tactics they're going to use and implement within the staff or the force and whatnot, or the team rather. I think that's huge, and I think that's one of the important pieces. But also developing a culture. I think when you look at military, right, that's strictly discipline. No time for BS, all business, all day, every day. Everything is to the T, to the point. There's a expectation present at all times. And then you look at more so a recreation department or something like a daycare, like a leader in a daycare, whatever, where it's different, it's chaotic. But the goal is to ensure safety and youth development for, I'm sure it's other things, but we'll just list those two. I think when you create that culture of, hey, this is how we're going to do things, like we're going to be family oriented or we're going to be business like, those are two examples, or whether or not two examples of leadership, like, hey, we're going to be militant about everything. We're going to pay attention to the details about everything. We're going to be exact on everything. There's a standard for everything. And then you got like more family oriented. Like, it's like, hey, we want to welcome you. We want to bring you in. We want you to feel empowered by us. I think it varies with different players, but I think the most important part about it is just having a standard that you already know, like that you're going to implement. Like your culture is I'm going to be militant. Okay, so therefore, I already understand what it takes to get to the goal. I understand how Travis is going to come in and lead us. And then now when Travis get on the board and he say, hey, we're going to get to point C by going through point A, B. All right. And then I already understand that. And I won't go against that as long as it's working. Correct. Like, so I think that's pretty much one of the things that I think overrides the different personalities and things. Because if we understand that championship, I'm speaking from the sports day, if championship is the main goal, and I'm telling you that we're going to be attention to details, we're going to practice all out, we're going to take care of each other, and we're going to be pros all day, every day, then that's going to be our culture. And so everybody can buy into that. And then when your personality starts to take their weight within that, it's still within the model of the culture that you have set present before us. And then it allows everything to blend because we all understand that we're on a mission, and I think that in order to get to that, I think talent observation is what I call it, is in the industry that I'm in, security. It's like understanding that detail, and from a sports perspective, it's understanding who's a visual learner and who's like a written test guy. So a guy may come in, he may know exactly what to do on the play, but he may be a visual learner, and then you put a written test in front of him. Well, that written test makes him nervous. That written test makes him second guess himself. And so now he's wrong on the written test. He may fail the test, but the whole time he knew the play. And then that's going to carry over into the field because now that test just confirmed or told him that he don't know the play. Instead of a coach stepping in and say, hey, I understand you're a visual learner. So instead of you getting up here on the board and drawing this out, how about you walk this through or walk me through the situation? And then for you guys, it'll probably be more so, here's the scenario. Walk me through how you see us accomplishing the detail or accomplishing a goal within the detail of this particular detail. So I think that's one of the culture, and then talent observation and understanding who you're actually talking to. There's a lot of guys who can, be very, you can be very stern with it. That motivates them. That brings a lot of them. But it's a lot of guys you just got to have a regular conversation with. Be like, hey, what was you thinking right here? And outside, by yourself. How did you process this? And then you able to coach them into like, hey, I would do things a little bit different here. Or I think that if you took this route instead of that route, that may, help you in accomplishing the goal at hand.
I'm so glad you brought up a couple great points there, Quinton. And one of them is intentionality, right? I mean, it goes back to what we started the show with is when a leader knows where they're going, knows where they want to do, they put up certain guardrails to accomplish that mission,
Mm-hmm.
and it's okay to be militant and to have a flow. You have to be somewhat flexible. It's that difference between spirit of the law versus the letter of the law.
Correct.
You can't be one or the other. It's a blend of the two, but it's always mission based. You have, where you're going. And you kind of have that, where the lines in the sand are at.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when you're bringing a number of people that are not all the same.
Correct.
And I think an NFL team shows some dramatic differences of different types of personalities in a locker room. And it's, I think, police departments are no different. I mean, sure, there's
everything.
There
all that.
There are motor cops and there's tactical guys and there's everything else in between.
Yeah.
But the issue is knowing your people, right? Mm-hmm. And knowing how to carry that message. And it's not the same. You can't just put out a playbook or a policy guide for an organization and then get mad when somebody fails.
Right.
You have to be able to walk everybody through in their own way. Mm-hmm. And it's something that I constantly preach to leaders is, find ways to connect people's individual values to organizational values.
Correct.
And when you do that, people step up because they see, everybody wants to win. And winning is different for every organization or any industry, but nobody likes to not win.
Correct.
Nobody's lining up to get a loser trophy. And
participation, but not losing.
Yeah, but again, you have to. It's intentionality, and so those. I think those coaches, more so than just being, a softie or like I'm radically stern. It doesn't really matter so much on where you fall on that spectrum. It's how do you use your tools to be most effective with everybody that you lead.
Yeah. And also I would add to that, I think it's very important to understand, like, especially when you're doing that talent observation, like what fits your culture, one, but then two, who am I delegating responsibilities to? I think we overlook a lot of so we overlook the individual, and then we don't delegate responsibilities to other individuals to actually bring out the culture that we're trying to cultivate within this process or within this detail. So I think those two things are huge things that's crucial that I've seen work tremendously, especially in sports. When a coach can't communicate everything to everyone. So sometimes they'll have a conversation with, the leader of the defense or the leader of the offense. Or sometimes they'll say, hey, Q is very close to, Damon. So let me ask Damon about Q and then get the information that I need to be able to go to Q and actually have a plan ahead of time and actual information that can get us further within the process and not just get on cue about a specific situation.
All that's so valuable, Quinton. And one thing I'll just talk from a spectator point of view. I don't think people understand the importance of leadership in that locker room, the importance of leadership, even at the coaching level and the player level, and the fact that every player has a leadership role. And I think how that manifests itself is you see a team with a lot of talent. I could portray this in law enforcement, a team with very qualified people, but the mission's not being objected. You change that leader out, or you change a few of those players out, and something clicks. Have you ever been involved in an environment like that where you knew you could be doing better, but it was just a change out of one or two personnel or a coach or two, and all of a sudden it started clicking? And if you have, what was the secret sauce to that?
Yeah, I think it goes back to I've been in a couple of situations, but I think it goes back to like effective communication. Like, again, I don't think nobody set out to actually lose, but nobody wants to be wrong as well. That's another huge issue within the industries in regards to, like, hey, if I got a plan to to complete this objective, but it doesn't work, or we're running to roadblocks, then I need to, revise this plan and include my team. And again, like, everybody wants to be the MVP, which is another issue, which I have found useful for me to delegate those responsibilities for you to feel like you're the MVP versus being the MVP. Because when you have these, what we call haters or people that don't want to give credit, what they're communicating is, I don't have enough responsibility in making decisions, and then it's frustrating me. And so I think that's one of the things that, instead of looking at them as a hater, just say, hey, this guy or this woman doesn't have enough responsibilities. Because, and I'm sure all of us know, running a business or running a team or running a corporation, like, that's not a easy load. So they see us and they think that, hey, they do this so well, or they lead the team so well, but they don't understand the responsibility and the different, hurdles that we got to constantly overcome to be able to put them in a better position. So when they have these, insecurities spurling out, I tell other leaders, and I tell other men that's in the security detail force, like, hey, delegate some of this responsibility. Because once you start seeing that, hey, I got to file this paperwork, or I got to actually meet with this person and meet with that person, or get this budget, or whatever the situation may be. Now I'm starting to get a little glimpse of what Q, or Brian or Travis is actually having to encounter on a day-to-day basis. But to get back to your question, I think the missing piece, like I said, is effective communication, and then talent observation. Like there's guys, like there's so I always try to use this from a sports perspective, like the 90s, early 90s Cowboy run, Raiders, they were getting like people who got in trouble a lot. Not bad people, just people who lived on the edge, I would say, and so that was what they did. And so it ended up getting Dallas, some championships and whatnot. But that's what their identity was. So to bring in, a guy that is, was raised in a military home, or someone who's strict, it's going to drive him nuts, because there are a lot of guys on this team who can go party up until 2 a.m. and be there at 6 a.m. like nothing happened, and they play that way. Like they have to be on the edge. A guy that comes to mind is Lawrence Taylor. Like he's not a guy that just want to go home, do his business, go home and be at peace. He wants to live. He wants to be, where everybody's who somebody is at. He wants to be in the midst, is what I call it. So, and there's a lot of guys in the NFL that does that. And you have to give that grace in some instances. But if that's what your culture, or that's the personality type on your team, then I'm going to know bringing in the guy that has the talent and could help us, but doesn't fit in the culture, it's not going to mix well. I need a star. Like I would need a Antonio Brown, someone who's loose, but also going to show up and do what he's supposed to do on the field. And the goal is, again, to win. So I won't get caught up with the antics that Antonio Brown is doing. I just be focused on understanding, like, this is a therapy to him in regards to partying or creating a video or whatever. And now when he get on the field, this is where, he's serving us. This is where he's getting the job done. This is where we win collectively, and observing and understanding that that's how, that's what I feel like talent observation is. So that's what I would say. Some of the missing pieces is understanding what your identity is as a team. And if it doesn't fit your identity, don't try to plug something in based off credentials or, what we friends of a friend or buddy behavior.
I'm glad you talked about culture, and I'd like to get to culture in just a bit. But
okay.
Or before that, you talked about something that was really important too, and I think it's especially in a situation where winning is on the line, especially if you're going to win or lose that day, that time frame, that those minutes on the field, they can be intense, and so in other industries, they might have more time, or sometimes that intensity is after an incident, after the game, and it's the finger pointing, right? It's the blaming. It's like getting mad for the result that happened. Maybe
Correct.
It was the loss, or maybe it was hey, I made a number of bad plays that cost us this game, or whatever it is, the finger pointing. Let's talk, because again, it's just human nature, right? We're all human beings. It doesn't matter what uniform we wear. At the end of the day, we either have good emotional regulation or we don't. How important, was it to, in those moments, is when you see somebody, that maybe is a little bit, kind of coming out of the box, like how important is it from that team perspective, from being on the field perspective, to reel that person back in, because that blaming doesn't seem to either help the next play at hand, you know, or you know, help that individual or organization in the long run. You know, could you kind of discuss, you know, your experience with that portion of the game?
Yeah, I think it goes back to effective communication again. I think if you're creating a culture and you, like, for example, for the sports perspective, we're here to win a championship, right? We win a championship that increases and helps everybody, right? You get more notoriety, you get bigger, more checks, and then you're able to leverage yourself in a lot of different situations. The more you climb, or the higher you climb within the race to the top, right? By focusing on winning and creating a culture of respect as one of the leading traits, I think when a guy steps outside his lines, or pointing the finger, or trying to play the blame game, I think reminding them of what the mission is and the goal is alleviates that. And what I mean by that is, as players, we're able to go to you and say, like, what's going on. But I'm also, as a player, is, if we're here to win and I see Brian mess up, or I see Brian didn't do his job, the goal is still to win. So I would do his job today to make sure that we win, and then have a conversation with him in regards to where he lacked. And I think understanding that everybody's not going to be a high performer, and having to have conversations with people who are not high performers. Hey, listen, I understand you don't do this well, but we really need you in this aspect. Like, we really need you to pick it up right here. Again, delegating responsibility, because I don't have the time to point fingers if I'm asked to do a lot, or if I'm asked to do some major task that's going to help us get to this goal. It's hard for me to point fingers. Now I can have I'm more enlightened to have a conversation. The only time that it kind of happens in sports is when, like, you get released, or, you start having trade talks. Or we don't really tell each other that, like, we don't really tattletale on each other. You got some guys who probably trying to stick around or whatever, probably do some behind the sleazy stuff, but we don't tolerate that. And once we find out, we do what we do. But I think that effective communication and having a goal in mind, and constantly repeating that goal, and helping men understand that, hey, we're here to win and not pointing fingers. Now, I also think that as a leader, it's your job to observe and see who's actually holding their weight, who's not holding their weight, and then who's obviously exceeding the expectation. So I think that's another thing that I would say is an issue, is that a leader don't observe because he's so high up, or he doing what he doing, that he don't take it every now and then, take a peek down and see exactly what the guys are doing. But I also think that when you constantly reminded them of the goal, or what the mission is, then it puts that at the forefront instead of the blame game.
Quinton, oddly enough, law enforcement and professional sports is very similar in the fact that, once again, I'm going to make an assumption here, there's egos involved. I think my assumption is probably correct, right? And leading a group of men or women where egos are involved can be extremely dicey, to say the least. So I just want to know, you've been around several coaches and leaders in your life. What was the success you saw from what were the traits in those leaders that were able to navigate those egos to bring success and bring that mission you talk about?
I think humility, or being in a meeting room and being humble in front of your peers, was one of the disciplinary traits, I guess, would be the answer to it. But more so from a example perspective, when ego is, in the Bible say pride comes before the fall. So it's the same thing. When you have someone who's egotistical, or stuck in the clouds and whatnot, they they have these same traits of missing key details because they think they are who they are, right? And so from a football perspective, it'll be like you a middle linebacker didn't get the crossing route, and they end up doing a drag across the field and taking it for 15, 20 yards or whatever on a crucial third down. Now, when he can hide behind that play in real time, but when we get to the film, we're going to see you didn't get the drag route. So he may come to the field and say, "Hey, the weak side linebacker didn't communicate with me," and you be like, "Okay." The coach would probably be like, "Okay," or whatever. But now we got tablets, so we can kind of see a little bit more. But yeah, you'd be like, "Okay, it is what it is," right? Okay. Then we get to film and we see, "Hey, you actually didn't do that." I've seen coaches humble, high ego individuals in front of the peers probably be the quickest way to eliminate that outside of probably the next best thing is the removal. I think that public humiliation kind of eliminates the ego because you can't fool us. No, you can't fool us. And then nobody that you go home to is there, so they're not going to be able to confirm or deny whether or not you're right. They just are listening ear. But it's your team that you're accountable to. You're accountable for. So if you get humbled in front of them, and they don't have to be very disrespectful, but I think it just has to be some intentionality there. There's some specifics as well. Like, so this is not no broad situation. This is like, for that, it was third down. We could have been off the field, but you took a bad read because you thought instead of knowing. We don't have time to really think on the film. Everything is reaction. So it's not an opportunity for you to sit back and think. So it's like, hey, you didn't see the crosser coming. Because if you did, you would have saw that we didn't lock in. So the backer didn't travel with him. And he passed it off to you. But you weren't paying attention because you saw a back in the backfield who stayed to block. So it's different. So I would say, yes, it's the fact that you were humbled in front of your peers, and then the removal, because at the end of the day, there's really no ego in team sports.
I love that. And, the other thing that I love what you said is the fact that, sometimes people are just not carrying their weight. Right. And I mean, sometimes it's human nature. Maybe they're not being motivated enough. Maybe there's other things going on in their life that are distracting them. But a leader's job is to kind of pull as many people into the fold. And, in public safety and law enforcement, the challenge is your high performers. The reward for doing a good job is getting more work. We have a tendency to ride those ponies hard. Right. If you did that in sports, that guy is going to be, in the injury tent, because, you can't hand the ball off to the same guy play after play after play after
Travis
play.
Hunter. I was just having this conversation about Travis Hunter. It's the same situation. We frowned upon, and people mad at us because as professional athletes, we're saying, hey, there's no way this guy's going to be able to do it. Like, yes, we do have aliens and talents that come in to NFL and do something magnificent or spectacular or something that we never seen, but you're not playing both sides of the ball at the rate that you're doing. And then I told somebody the other day, I was like, hey, don't you find it odd that Travis have gotten hurt around the same time these past 2 years? And then, one was a bad hit, but then this one was another hit. It's like, we're playing football. Your body ability to absorb contact is there if you can monitor and take care of it. But when you're playing 150 snaps night in and night out, that doesn't make sense, on top of practice, on top of weightlifting. And then these kids aren't like eating right. They're in their prime. Like they not eating like structured meals and stuff like that. They don't think about that. They eat what they want to eat because they can just wake up and go. They in their prime. So that was just an example that just came to my mind as soon as you said something.
Yeah, and Quinton, I am admittedly a Coach Prime fan. I couldn't stand him as a player. I was at a game and watched his antics and thought it was really off-putting, but I watched the evolution of him as a man into his coaching years, and I'm a huge fan, but I have to agree with you. It's like in baseball. You can't throw you have so many throws in the arm, right? There's a reason why we're giving 5-day rest. We're doing pitch counts.
Absolutely.
and it certainly concerns me. So I'm not sure the mindset of playing him that much, 100+ plays a game. I watch him every week. He's obviously an incredible athlete, but I'm concerned for the young man. I don't even know if I have a question, but you just got me all giddy talking about the Colorado Buffaloes.
It's taking 2 to 3 years off of him in his NFL prime, and that's
that
the issue
NFL
that
career is average of 3 years anyway, right? It's not a long career.
And I'm sure, based off where he's slotted, he'll get a 4-year contract, so he'll beat the odds. Mm-hmm. However, you're taking away 2 to 3 years of prime Travis Hunter is what I'm seeing. Deion's a great guy, great man, great coach. From afar, from what I see, but he's flawed as well. But I why would you jeopardize him when you have a Horn Jr., like when you have other receivers, like Travis playing receiver? And I'm just being quite frank. Travis playing receiver does nothing for Buffalo. It doesn't. Now he's an athlete, so there's going to be plays made because he's a natural athlete. And we don't have coaches who understand details to be able to put defenses out there to be able to stop him. I know some guys that will put a defense together and Travis would not be Travis on offense. That is nothing nobody can do with him on defense. Yeah. But when you have, we're in a stage of sports where it's like, idolization, or, everybody's a fan, everybody's nice. There's nobody out there like trying to hurt Trav. Like there's nobody trying to take his head off. Now that's the game that I grew up in. Mm-hmm. Like if you're the best, you have to prove you're the best. You have to beat a man to show that you're the best. You look at Ray Lewis and Eddie George. Those are two grown men trying to take their head, like they're literally trying to take each other out. And they actually are friends and bros off the field. But that era of football that we grew up in is like you can't be the best being nice on the field. It's a gladiator sport. It's a man's game. And so, these coaches, they get caught up with, the basic trends within college football. And I'm like, hey, if you don't roll coverage to Travis, who's going to beat you?
Yeah.
Who's going to beat you? Because Horn Jr. is limited in situations. And he should be the star, but he still has to play behind the aura of Travis Hunter. So if I'm a defense, I just box or cage is what we used to call it, Travis, and Shador gonna have to beat me. And he's a great quarterback. He's a good kid. I just don't think that he's able to beat me if I take away the people that he's trying to go to. Like he's making it very clear. I'm going to Travis and I'm going to Horn.
Like, it's fun to watch when it happens, but it's fun. But you're right. There's certainly ways to take that away.
Well, here's the reason why they're always in late fourth quarter runs, either to win or lose the game. They're not like blowing people out. It's either like it's last 3, 4, 5 minutes of the game is the determining factor. And I'm like, where are these other coaches? What are y'all thinking? Like, why y'all even? And Colorado's not a good football team. Let's just be honest. But I do respect the wins that he has. He has got this so far this year, and I respect him being persistent and his coaching style.
Yeah, you said something there that sort of triggered a thought. Law enforcement deals with a lot of people that don't know a lot about law enforcement. that they're the biggest critics of law enforcement. And in a sense, law enforcement shifted because of the critics, which has really backfired in many ways. Crime rates have soared. We've gotten off the mission. Recruiting has been struggling, retention struggling. And some of that is due to paying attention to the critics and acting on the critics. Well, that's no different in sports, right? Everybody thinks they know what you're supposed to do, but they don't really know. And I'm just curious to the tips you would give leaders out there, because probably sports and law enforcement is probably a big, there's probably not a lot of people critiquing accountants, but there's probably these two professions, they really are. Any tips you have when you played, or the tips you saw coaches do where you drowned out that noise and stayed with the mission? Any tips you could give folks?
Yeah, I tell especially athletes this all the time. Only voices that matter is the ones that's in the room with me. There will always, I used it as example. I said, Jesus was perfect and they hated him. Like, they talked about him. So what makes you think that you're going to be this unique individual that everybody loves? Like, it's never happened in the history of life, period. Like, it is what it is. So the voices that matter are the people that's in the room, the people that I'm going to battle with. How do they feel? And which is where I think that teamwork, team activities, and then team bonding, building meals, and events are what makes a great team, or what kind of eliminates those critics from even having a voice in your eyes. The thing about it, if I'm being transparent, is media had did a huge disservice to law enforcement. I mean, literally put the bull's eye on you guys' back, made you guys go from heroes to, it's sort of like Trump. I don't want to, be political or nothing, but the same thing. Like, if you look up at his career, he was loved in media. Media loved him. He was this brain guy. The Apprentice went like #1 for like 15 years.
Yeah, you're watching these same media people fawning over him a decade ago.
And it's like, okay, now let me go run for president. He's the worst thing ever. He's a devil. He's going to ruin democracy and all. It's like he has pictures, videos, everything. Everybody loved him, and now because he wanted to run for president, it's different. I think it happened with the same thing with the police, with law enforcement. I think that you guys used to be, I would say, probably right there on the military. Like, it was military, police officer, very honorable, stand-up guys. We trusted was going to do the job, and they focused and highlighted on specific situations that they end up define law enforcement in general. So I think that because of that disservice, that it's a little more difficult, because for us, it's a crowd. So we know, like, it's a 2.5, 3 hour window, and then you got maybe an hour coverage on media, and in regards to like ESPN or the sports shows or whatever. And then you may have another hour throughout the week or whatever. So you saying a total of probably about 5 hours of critique versus you guys are working into the communities. And the media saying that you ain't nothing, that has brainwashed their community to say that you ain't nothing, that demonize you. And then you got your family who is empathizing with you, and like, we got to be there for Travis because he's going through hell. And so it's a little more different dynamic, because you guys, it continues versus having a break of like, all right, now I can be a police officer.
Yeah, you're right. There is a continuance of that, and there is a response that needs to happen to that. But Quinton, near the end of your career, the NFL itself kind of suffered from the same thing from the media, right? You had literally one player that brought a lot of attention to the NFL in a negative way, regardless of your belief politically. NFL, your ratings went down, things started happening, people started talking about the NFL nonstop, right? But the NFL has come out of that. I just went to a game. I saw the Raiders play 2 weeks ago, and I was amazed by the entertainment value and just it looks nothing like the what the media would try to make you think it looked like. Oh, NFL's full of thugs or full of this or full of that. You've heard all that. That NFL as an organization, I think, has recovered fully from that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there's an answer on how or why, other than they just kept putting a great product on the field. Right? They just kept putting a great product on the field, and in time, you got out from underneath that.
Yeah, I would say it's sort of what I tell kids today and other individuals. Some of the guys that I run into retired that kind of got like a following or trying to be an internet personality or whatever. They it's only for a moment. Weather the storm, right? So we didn't have a NFL didn't have a plan because we didn't believe that it would actually happen. Like we didn't think that it would go far overall, right? And then so we are like NBA is an entity. They can lose, they got space to lose money for a little while or whatever. But if you can, it's sort of like the market, right? When the market dip, it's a good time to buy. But if you up, then weather the storm. If you take a loss, weather the storm, stay consistent with your strategy, and then you'll start seeing up something jump, and now you back up at top. So it's the same thing. I think when you're able to weather the storm, it doesn't work effectively. Like when you give energy to it, because it's all emotional at the end of the day. Like police brutality was emotional. Colin Kaepernick was emotional. And again, the media jumped behind it because it was something that was going to draw ratings. It was something that was going to draw clicks. So there was no more. It's no more integrity in media no more. I think it's called the Fair Something Act, basically where media were responsible for actually publishing truthful news to the best of their ability, not just clickbait news. And so drama sells, and so we understand that. And so I tell people, we're in such a high-powered social media society right now that if you just weather the storm, it'll be over in a little bit, like, because it's something else that's going to happen. It was Donald Sterling and it went to George Floyd or whatever. Well, I tell people, put out the good stuff. Put out the one when you got a speeding violation, but the police officer felt the need to just give you a warning. Put it in there where we was respectful, and it ended up being a traffic stop that was non-avoid. Like, we just let you go. Put it in there where the officer helped the old lady get across the street. Those videos or whatever. And I think it's up to law enforcement, different police departments, cops TV, all that, to put it out there, even though we know the drama is going to sell. You guys catching the robber, you catching the guy with drugs or whatever the situation may be. Put it out there and counter it, because that's what's going to alleviate all the kickback, because it's gonna be like, hey, so it sound like, and I hate to go to politics, it's just political world right now, but it's the same thing. Like you say, Trump support the Nazis or whatever, the white supremacists or whatever, and then you go and you see that they cut the whole speech. He said there was good people on both sides, and I condemn the Nazis, the white supremacists, and the white nationalists or whatever. But if you don't only hear that there was good people on both sides, and then you see somebody get ran over, then you see somebody, out there with tiki torches, it's like, oh, this guy supports that. Nobody's doing their due diligence and finding out that, hey, this is a cut from a speech that he had that he literally denounced them, but we're going to run with this because that's what's going to sell. And so you counter it by putting it out there, and there's going to be people who love law enforcement who's going to repost, reshare, X, Y, Z, and now make the viewers have to decide, hey, do I believe the narrative that they're trying to portray, or do I believe these 100 million videos of cops letting us get away with being positive impacts in the community and actually taking the bad guys off the streets?
Yeah, that's a really good message, because here's the deal. There's danger in a single story, and there's a TED Talk about the danger of a single story.
Yeah,
we'll make sure we include it in the show notes. But police departments are going to be judged by the level of intensity they have the level of the intensity of the interactions they have with the public. So
Right.
if you're a police department and you just go out and you hammer people on tickets all day long, no letter of the law,
Right.
you're not going to have a lot. I mean, we started the show with about how important trust is, right?
Right.
You're not going to have a lot of trust. But if
No.
you're an agency that goes out and just gets down and into the communities and doesn't let my beliefs and your beliefs get in the way of having a valued conversation, right? And you solve problems and you're talking to the community, and sometimes when you do things that didn't work out the way that the community expected them to, that you at least have those real talks with them, trust is made. Trust is just these little drops day in and day out, day in and day out. And it doesn't matter if you're a police department or an NFL team or anybody else. It's just a matter of being, like you said, being humble, admitting the mistakes that you make when they happen, putting an ungodly amount of trust in that piggy bank, and being proactive and intentional and mission oriented, right? I mean, we're covering all these tracks today because they are all so relevant, and not only in sports, but in police work, in our country's overall direction, and it's
your household where it really starts.
100%.
So I totally agree with that.
Well, I don't know what just happened there. Okay.
You took us off. You were so happy about seeing yourself.
So going back to, this leadership topic, looking back on your career, is there specific things that you think, okay, well, let's, beyond the humility, beyond the mission purpose, beyond that culture type, because those are all incredibly relevant. And we can do a whole show on just culture in of itself. I mean, culture eats strategy for breakfast, but, what advice would you give a new leader? Like, hey, these are the things that you really need to be putting your attention towards. I mean, what are the types of leaders that you played harder for and gravitated to? What were their qualities?
They demand respect, communicated very well, effective communicator, knowledgeable, very intellectual, very high intellectual beings, and charismatic. I would say that charismatic. I think these things are pretty much the essentials in regards to effective leadership. If you don't have respect, you don't have trust, you don't have anything. That's going to, make your voice tone deaf, and then you're not able to execute or even express your understanding or knowledge of the objective. So I would say, though it's weird because everybody can't really understand how to be an effective leader outside of like 1 or 2 steps. So here I am giving like 4, so it's kind of different. But I would say, effective communicator. You got to be able to articulate and communicate. I don't think nothing can happen without communication. Like, that's day-to-day life. That's law enforcement. That's sports. That's anything. Like, even dealing with your wife, your kids, whatever the situation may be. If you can't communicate exactly what the mission is, then how are we going to get there? How are we going to get to accomplishing the objective? And so, Quinn, go ahead.
Oh, well, Quinn, I think what is so impressive is so many of the things you talk about transcends all other organizations, right? Sports is not unique. Law enforcement is not unique. And sports has, while law enforcement may have a chain of command through the rank system, usually you can go from rank to rank regardless of what your leadership success is. But I think in coaching or sports, the leadership is so vital to the mission. how important is it to have that graduate assistant role from the college level? Because most of your NFL coaches, that's exactly where they came from, right? They started typically at maybe the college level, not even hardly getting paid, but at that grad assistant level, because it's very difficult, is it not, to work your way up through grad assistant to assistant coach to specialty coach to head coach if you're not good at the lower levels?
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna have to overcome a lot of obstacles, especially, I mean, you guys are aware of it. It's not necessarily what you know, is who you know. So I think it's that's the biggest hurdle. But I also try to warn people that I've seen be effective is not you being a prototype, but you actually being someone that is constructed within the model, but also able to be creative and innovative in different aspects of what we're doing in regards to this is coaching. So it's vital. It's vital. But the one thing that's going to expedite the process is understanding the game at a high level and being able to execute, and especially in game. Because, and I've talked to Brian about this a lot, like in game, there's not a lot of coaches who can see in the game. Like, they pick a specific uh, line or quarterback or DB. Like, they pick a specific position and focus on that within the game, but they're not in the game. Like, and so the coaches that are in the game, which means that they're able to still have sanity and enough conscience to be able to make an in-game adjustment. It'd be sort of like you guys, like, being able to assess the situation before it happens, understanding that, hey, I'm gonna go in here this way, but this may happen. Having those 2 to 3s run through your head, so when one of them show up, I'm already prepared for that.
Yeah, we see the same thing, and you alluded to it, Quinton, where you can have a textbook knowledge of what to do, but you have to adjust throughout the game or those days. And you see that in sports easily with a team looks completely different after halftime because you know what went on in that locker room, and then sometimes it doesn't. So, man, no truer words have been said. Is I think that does delineate great leaders where, and we saw it affect law enforcement when 2015, 2016 happened. You saw many departments didn't know what to do when that shift in culture happened. You saw some do a decent job with it, doing some of the things you even suggested, but many of them just got caught flat-heeled. I call it, there's a difference in leadership during peacetime and leadership during a crisis, right?
Correct.
And we were under about 2 decades, Brian, of peace, right? Nothing really happening, right? It was very easy to lead in those times, but really leaders rise to the top during those tough times.
Yeah, you need a president in the war room and a general on the battlefield.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, and being able to understand that, hey, that general works well on the battlefield. The president works well in the war room where he has different voices and we all constructing the best plan and objective to accomplish. But the general is the person like, hey, we're moving in east. We need to retreat and move in from the south. They have a blind side, they can't get back here this way. And we got the barriers to be able to, circle around them and get it's so much that, that goes into it. But I think that the being in game and understanding the game at a high level to being able to make those in-game adjustments is really is critical, especially in sports, because you see it, like I said, Friday. When I watch football Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I watched the game 2 Fridays ago, and I left at the top of the third quarter. I watched the first half. I knew exactly both of the coaches' game plan. A quarterback threw a pick. He just threw a pick. It wasn't a pick six. He threw a pick at the top of the third quarter, second play of the first possession. I left the game. I was going to see this team, but I left the game. And when I actually got my therapist actually does work for that, so he invited me out. A physical therapist. And so he called me. He was like, "Why you leave?" Whatever. I was like, I knew the game was over with when he threw that pick. I said, "How much y'all lose by?" He was like, 14. I already knew. You didn't make no adjustments because if you did, you wouldn't have threw the pick. You wouldn't have threw the pick from the beginning, And so I knew you didn't make no adjustments. And I knew that you have been playing that kid very reserved. Same thing with the Steelers. I know exactly when they about to win. I turn it off when they about to lose because I already know at halftime if they didn't make no adjustments, it ain't gonna happen. Now, every now and then you may get something like, you know, a random fumble or something that may get them to win by 1 or 2. But traditionally, I know exactly when. I know the game at a level. I understand exactly where we're going with this, and it frustrates me. But you know, but being able to understand that game at that level and understanding that, hey, we're you guys didn't make no adjustments and you're coming out here running the same plays, you're gonna get beat. And the team that they was the underdogs, but they was winning. And the other team had more talent, more structure, more discipline. So I said, you guys, you know, it's like the New England Patriots. I tell people all the time, like, you couldn't let the New England Patriots hang around. Tom Brady gonna figure it out. Him and Belichick together, they're gonna figure it out. So you have to go ahead and blow them out. And you can't you can't give them an opportunity to come back. And so when I see these things happening in real time, I'd be like, hey, yeah, I already know this is about to go. It's like, you know, and you guys were, you know, the guy walks into, I tell this with church security. If a guy walks in here in the middle of summer with a black trench coat, we don't have to tell him that Jesus is Lord. Okay, we can go ahead and have a conversation with him and get him off the premises.
Well, I can attest for, you know, Monday mornings at the gym, you know, under right at the squat rack, you know, and the TVs are going, they're showing plays, and I can see how frustrated he is pointing up, and you might as well have, you know, have the ability to draw the circles and X's
in
and
the
O's
gym.
on the
I'm
TV,
going crazy
because you know, and it's you know, having the foresight to see some of those things you know, happen, and again, that comes back down to knowing your trade and loving your trade, having passion for it, to the point where, you know, it doesn't matter what position you're at, or even if you think, okay, well, I've ascended to the top, now I don't need to learn anymore. Man, it's all about curiosity. If you stay curious, you will be furious. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what endeavor you're in. You've got to keep that curiosity intensity up. And then be humble enough when things don't work out, and then build those people back up and get them engaged back into the game, because when you don't, everything else falls apart. And
look forward to the mistake. I tell cats all the time, look forward to the mistake. You can't grow unless you make the mistake. You know, so I think there's a misconception of like the mistake is the end of the world. It's like, nah, look forward to the mistake. Because if I got it right, I'm going to progress. But if I got it wrong, I'm going to understand 2 levels of details that I didn't know that got me to that place, versus understanding the surface level that got me to victory. But if I got it wrong, I know what happened, and it made me go back and figure that part out. But then I get leadership from Travis and Brian that come back and tell me, hey, do this as well to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And I don't think nobody wants to be wrong no more, which is another thing. Like, hey, why wouldn't you want to learn? Because that's all getting it wrong means. I got another opportunity to learn.
Yeah, we've got to give people permission to make mistakes, right? That's the only way you're going to learn. That's got to be okay from a leadership standpoint, where we understand that only one person has been perfect in this world. And he doesn't work for me or you, Quinton.
Come on.
You know, he's not on our team.
Yeah, I mean, it's simple. It's like, it's science. Without a hypothesis, what are we doing? Right? We can't discover what it is unless we go through failing. I mean, what, Elon just landed the rocket shuttle. But it's beautiful to see. However, we couldn't imagine how much money was lost and how many times he failed at this attempt, him and his team, at getting this one thing. But the risk is worth the reward.
Well, the amazing thing about that is nobody remembers the failure.
Right.
All of the videos of that rocket ship coming back in and landing, nobody said, yeah, but they just remember the success.
Yeah.
But you know who did? The team. The team remembered, because they remember that they had to sleep in the office. They remember how they was getting critiqued so bad. They remember how they had to relocate from California to Texas. They remember how this one fell, how that one fell, how I forgot to put this formula in that ended up messing. Like, they remember, which is the reason why they were celebrating and rejoicing so much, because it's like, we did it. We tried and tried and tried, and we did it. And that's the result of learning. That's the result of making mistakes and understanding that, hey, you're not going to be perfect. You're not going to always get it on the first try. Like, it's better for you to miss and get retaught and get more detail. Like, I've never got something wrong and got less details than I did when it first was introduced to me. And that's what I need to get to, because now I'm on an expedited process of becoming a master, because where you got it right the first time and you moved on, I got it wrong, I got corrected, and I got 2 levels more than you did on this specific situation. So there may come a time where it worked in this situation, but the next situation, it started you. You stumbled upon it, but now you got to refer to me to help you with the extra details that's going to get you past this, because now I have more knowledge versus me just going through the process.
Well, that's the highest of highs, emotion of winning, right? And it's because those people have failed over and over and over again, to the point that top feels so amazingly high.
Right.
It's the Michael Jordan commercial. I've failed, 1,000 times.
Right.
It's just, that's the pinnacle, and it's a really good place to stop our show too, right? It's
all good. Yeah.
It's all about the story, right? It's all
No
about
doubt.
the
We'd
story.
be in trouble at lunch together, fellas. This could go on and on.
Trust me. I can't wait.
Yeah. Well, hey, we're so fortunate to have this hour with you two. Again, to dig into things that are important to us, and hopefully to others listening and watching. And again, hats off to you, and thank you again for hanging out with us.
No doubt, man. Thank you guys for having me as well. Anytime you need me, know where to find me. Just reach out. But this was good. This was fun, and I'm glad you guys decided to have me on.
Thank you, Quinton.
All right. Well, that's a wrap for this show. We'll catch you on the next episode. And until then, have a great day.